Welcome everybody. This is our talk for PhDs on becoming an academic. What I'm going to cover today is an introduction to academia. And one of the important things I've got is that I've got some video clips of a couple of our own academics who are talking about their role, their pathway into academia. It's better that you hear from them than you hear directly from me about this. So you'll get to hear about their academic roles. You'll get to hear how they got into their academic role. I'll also talk a bit about kind of academic supply and demand and kind of the pathways in and what are your chances really. And then I'll talk about things that you can do now to get yourself on track. So assuming you're coming either during your PhD or coming towards the end of your PhD, what can you be doing to increase your chances of being the person who makes it as an academic? And then we'll talk a little bit about further support. Now, I'm conscious that everybody talks about academia being so competitive and there are no jobs out there. There will be potentially people who are listening to this who will make it to professor. And that's fantastic. And I want to encourage people who do want to go for academia to take it seriously. But you need to do things to make it a serious proposition. So I think it's better that you get a realistic view and then get encouragement and support to do all the right things, which hopefully may make you the person who makes it in academia. And if not, then we help you find something which is equally fulfilling and satisfying and can have a real impact as a PhD. If you do get to the end and you're thinking about things which are an alternative to academia, then we've got a whole other section, a whole other talk on the job market and navigating the job market for doctoral researchers. So please do have a look at that on the Career Service website or on our YouTube channel. So people who are going to be talking to you today are two of our recent worked examples. So we've got Cecilia Medupin, who's a senior lecturer in Earth and Environmental Sciences. And we've got Michael Smith, who's a very newly appointed lecturer in medical biochemistry. So without further ado, I think we ought to hear from one of those. So let's hear from Michael first about how he became an academic.
Yeah, sure. My path was fairly long and arduous, which is probably true for most people nowadays. I got my PhD at Manchester after having studied my undergraduate at Manchester. I then did a postdoc in Manchester. I did that in a lab that was being run by a new fellow. That lab died and left. She retired to Spain. So I was left trying to find a position. I kept failing, so then I took up another postdoc, again with a new fellow, and yeah, I spent about 3 years there, always kind of trying to find a permanent faculty position, but weren't able to get one until, very recently, and then, it just happened.
So that's Michael's story, and so that's a fairly conventional postdoc after postdoc after postdoc type approach. Cecilia's a little bit different, so let's hear from Cecilia.
I didn't have a traditional route of being an academic because I had worked in industry. I worked in diverse industries. I worked in the food and beverage industry. I worked in the nuclear industry. I worked in environmental regulation. I worked in consulting, and I worked as an environmental auditor before becoming an academic. So, and those parts were, added to the role becoming an academic on the other side of the globe, that is in Nigeria, with the Open University. And then coming over to carry on with a PhD, and then now working as an academic in the UK. So you can see it's not a direct route, but then everybody has their own story and pathways.
I think that's very true. When you talk to academics, you often find that it hasn't been quite as clear cut or quite as straight and obvious as people seem to assume becoming an academic is. So let's find out a little bit more from them about what they're doing as academics. And we'll start out with Michael again.
So I'm a teaching focused lecturer, which means the majority of my time is based in teaching. Because I'm still relatively new, I'm still doing a little bit of research with the labs that I worked in previously, I'm mainly finishing off papers. There are still students there that I'm helping out with. However, there will be some research that will be ongoing in my teaching career, but it will move away from science into looking at different teaching methods and stuff like that. Proportionally, I'd say I'm probably spending less than 10% of my time thinking about research or reading papers nowadays, and most of it is on teaching, but that teaching is still probably only about 20% of the time. The other time is normally spent either doing admin work, working out what I'm meant to be doing, producing resources, having meetings to try and work out what it is that we're going to be able to do with the students this year or next year. So yeah, that's pretty much what I spend my time doing.
Okay. As I said, Michael's at the early stages of becoming a teaching focused lecturer. And so a lot of his time is going to be spent actually amassing all the resources and so on, and trying to put in place strategies, as well as doing the actual teaching. Okay, let's find out from Cecilia then.
The bulk of my work is teaching, because my role is teaching and scholarship. So, but in spite of that, I have other times which I allocate for personal development, for writing my papers and then collaborating with colleagues on research papers. And then with the administrative activities is concurrently, you do it alongside. So with the teaching, let me just say 80% of my work is teaching. I have a bit of a 20% for a research with a research grant I'm working on, which is the National Environmental Research Council on Engaging Environment. So, and the other part of knowledge transfer is something I enjoy doing. So I do it as a way of life. And so everything I do over 100% with many things I do, but I enjoy things.
I think one thing I quickly realized when I was talking to Cecilia is that she has boundless energy. So she just gets through so much. If you have a look at her profile on the research portal, it's amazing, the amount of stuff that she gets through. Okay, so what you've got there is that both Cecilia and Michael are in kind of predominantly teaching focused roles, and there are different routes into academia. So what I've done is just to show you the what happens in the University of Manchester, and these are the routes from lecturer all the way up to professor using the University of Manchester processes. So the classic one is a combined teaching and research lecturer. So you're teaching classes to undergraduates and to master's students. You are doing your own research. You are running your own either labs or research groups. You're writing papers, you're writing books, you're supervising PhDs. You've got maybe postdocs or research associates working for you. And so that's kind of the rounded package. And that is the majority of people, certainly at the University of Manchester, and probably the majority in academia generally. And the classic route is get appointed as a permanent lecturer, get promotion hopefully to senior lecturer, then to reader, then to professor. Chair and professor at the same level. I'm not sure if they're exactly the same, but kind of defined positions as chairs. But that kind of chair and professor are both at the same level. Interesting thing about academia, and I found this really hard to get my head around as a former HR manager in industry, is that you don't have to wait for there to be a senior lecturer vacancy and then apply for it as a job. You actually get promoted based on your output, basically. So what are you producing as academics in terms of the papers, the research, or the other activities that you're being measured on? And if you want to find out how you progress up the line, really useful thing to do is to log into the University of Manchester website and download a copy of the promotion criteria for academics. And it will tell you exactly what you need to do at different levels all the way up to professor. That's a really good way of trying to assess if that's the kind of research, that's the kind of career path that you want to go down. Now, if you're not doing the teaching and research combined, what you might be doing is being teaching focused. And I think, as you pointed out, teaching focused isn't just lecturing. It's also going to be doing research, but research into teaching. So research into pedagogy, the ways that people learn, doing some practical research into teaching teaching undergraduates or master's students. So you're not getting away from research completely. But the promotion path is still lecturer, senior lecturer, reader, professor. So we do have people who are at professor level who are teaching focused, and that wasn't very common previously, but it's become more and more accepted, and certainly more common at universities like Manchester, as we've realised the importance of having really focused teaching expertise within the academic staff. But what if you don't fancy teaching? And I know there's quite a few PhDs and postdocs who don't. Well, there is a research focused route. And if you go down the research focus route, you can actually progress from a research fellow, senior research fellow, reader, all the way up to professor, just doing research. There aren't going to be many people who will do that, to be honest, because we need a lot of people to do all that lecturing. We need people to do all kind of administration, the knowledge transfer and so on. But I think you can be pretty sure that our Nobel Prize winners aren't busy, doing all those kind of undergraduate lectures. They're probably doing down the research focused route. Now, you've got to be a bit careful about the terminology here, because research fellow is used in two terms. This is the path I'm showing you where you get a permanent job as an academic, as a research fellow on the same level as a lecturer. Whereas there are other types of positions which are called research fellow, which are done post-PhD, and they're short-term fixed contracts where you're doing specifically, generally your own research. So you get to define your own research path. So that you need to get below the headlines. If you're seeing these things advertised, you can't assume that research fellow is one or the other. You have to check it out. So what about people who are really interested in research or teaching only? Well, let me show you let me show you, could you focus on just research or teaching? Well, academic staff, these are academic staff in UK universities. It dates back to 2018, and it gives you a feel for the proportion of people in academia in universities in the UK who are teaching and research focused and who are got open-ended contracts, which is another word for the permanent jobs, versus fixed term, which is like the postdoc jobs. Okay, so the top line is teaching and research, the traditional academic. You can see that the majority of them are full-time open-ended contracts. There are quite a number of people who are on part-time open-ended contracts, or part-time permanent jobs, but teaching and research. And then a much smaller proportion who are doing fixed term, either full-time or part-time, teaching and research combined. If you get down to the teaching only, you've got a smaller proportion who are doing open-ended permanent full-time jobs, and quite a large proportion who are doing permanent part-time jobs. That's an interesting avenue to explore. Fewer people who are doing fixed-term full-time, but quite a lot of people who are doing fixed-term part-time. This is a feature of quite a few disciplines, particularly in the humanities, where after a PhD, it's not unusual that you have to spend quite a bit of time doing bits and pieces of fixed-term teaching only type roles before hopefully establishing yourself as an academic or deciding that you're going to a different career. Now, the research only line, again, you've got a smaller number, even smaller than teaching, which are permanent full-time jobs, and a very small number who are permanent part-time jobs, just teaching, just research rather. There are far more who are fixed-term full-time or fixed-term part-time. That's the postdocs. The postdocs who are in the labs that you may be familiar with, that's where they tend to be clustered. So it's a fixed term role. So let me talk you through these kind of research only roles, because I know that they're popular with quite a few PhDs I speak to. What are they? Well, that's the classic one. A research associate is often the terminology, but again, you just have to be careful because there's no official title. Sometimes get research assistant, research associates, all sorts of different titles, but research associate is the most common. And that's a postdoctoral, so somebody with a PhD who's doing research. The more common in science, technology, medicine, engineering type subjects, but you do find them in humanities. Occasionally I've been challenged and say, we don't have those in the arts. And I can always find you examples of where you do have them, but they're not as common, not by a long stretch. They are fixed term contracts, and they're associated with a specific research project. So somebody's got funding for a research project, and they will put out an advert for, say, a 3-year postdoctoral position to work on that specific research project. Now, I mean, postdocs obviously do get the chance to publish, to bring themselves to these particular research projects, but they don't get the chance to define exactly which area they want to go into for these types of positions. There's been a lot of talk over the last few years about wanting to get away from this fixed term model. And it hasn't gone away, but at least what we have got now is that you can build up continuity of service with the university. But again, it doesn't mean to say that you have a guarantee of a permanent job. What it means is that if you have more than a certain number of years service with a specific employer, it means that if the job goes away, then they have to do everything they can to try and find you an alternative, but they can still make you redundant. So, it's some step forward. And I think better progress has been made in actually changing that kind of model, but it's still there. It's fundamentally built into academia at the moment. And because of that, for most people, this isn't a long-term career option. So the idea of doing postdoc after postdoc after postdoc, I have come across people who have built a long-term career doing that because they are confident that they can always find enough money to create a postdoc within an institution. But you have to be comfortable living with that uncertainty that every few years you might have to think about either moving jobs, moving universities, moving countries, and that's quite disruptive. There are some other roles, though, kind of almost permanent research-focused roles within universities. And I always used to say that they're like gold dust, these experimental officers, hardly any of them. And I'd always look on the University of Manchester website and find 3 of them being advertised whenever I said that. So they are out there. I had a quick look today and I managed to find about 60 people who are in the university who've got experimental officer as their job title officially on our email list. That means there's a minimum of 60, there's probably a lot more. And they're the people who are managing the scientific or engineering facilities. I'm managing staff who run those. And they're also contributing to research projects and contributing potentially to papers. Not sure how much they get the chance to do their own research projects, but they're still within a research environment, but they're permanent jobs. So I know that if you want to go and have a permanent job doing just research in a university, go and see if you can find the experimental officers in your department. They're probably keeping Strum and just keep me in this job because I love it, which is the normal view. Then, of course, if you're an outstanding researcher, we're not going to make you do, marking undergraduate exams. But that depends on you being able to attract research funding. Constantly be able to attract research funding to buy out the teaching, the other commitments which somebody's going to have to do. And these are the people who go from research fellow up to professor track. So no, it isn't only the Nobel Prize winners who get onto that. We've got other people who are research fellows, senior research fellows, but you do have to be a really strong researcher to be able to consider that route. It's not for somebody who wants to stay in the background. The other one to look at are research institutes. So these are university level employment. They are, I think, what was it? One of them called it. It was they're like an ideas factory. I think that was the Sanger Institute they were claiming. And so you're expected to deliver on research, but you're only doing research. You're not having to do lecturing. But if you look at their promotion criteria and their career tracks, you are expected to deliver on research. And if you're not delivering on research, you will find that you're being expected to transition somewhere else. Okay, so it's not an easy option, but it is an option if you really love research and you know that you're going to be pretty good at it. Okay, so you make it as an academic. Let's find out about what life as an academic is like. And you're getting a couple of contrasting versions here. One from Cecilia.
Work will remain work. That is certain. Work will remain work and life will continue. So you have a choice to keep working without taking a break, or you keep looking to work and enjoy it and balance life at the same time. So with me, I have different hobbies. I have hobbies. I sing in the choir, I used to sing with the university chorus before, you understand? And for more than 4 years, I was singing in that choir. But now I sing with the Manchester Community Choir. I belong to the hiking group in town, so it gives me opportunity of meeting with other people. I have interesting, I belong to different church groups, activities, and I also have time for family, and I have time for activities, and I'm on ground to know what is what is happening at home. So this kind of balancing helps to offset the pressure that work brings. Because you come to work, it's a different problem entirely. You meet with people who come with their personal problems, and then they wear it like uniform, and then they share it with you at work and send nasty emails. So, but you need the other absorption spectrum. I will rather absorption spectra that take off the pressure of work to give you the balance that you need to keep helping people. Because I see this role as an academic, it's not just the teaching and the collecting salary, but it's also impacting lives. So there must be that balance. And your presentation also matters in terms of helping people to see a balance.
I love Cecilia's turn of phrase. As you can see, she's got energy. Okay, let's compare and contrast with a couple of comments from Michael.
Well, work and private life previously as a postdoc didn't really exist. If it exists for any postdocs, either your lab is ridiculously well run, or the experiments you're doing are just lovely. But yeah, for me, it was almost impossible to balance work life and private life. It's just it's an all-consuming, self-obsessive, individualistic idea of you running your research, and it's you against the world, trying to get papers out, trying to get grants in, trying to keep money, and it's all about you. So I'd say now in teaching, as I said, the actual structure and having like a set week where you know when you need to be in, when you don't need to be in, and that's made the work-life balance just ridiculously better. And no weekend work.
I'd like to point out Michael is at the start of his lecturing position. I don't think he's been through the exam cycle yet, so he may find his weekend work to come. Okay, let's get another addition to that view.
There's a massive stark contrast between this role and being a postdoc. The things that I think are just fantastic are the structure. So my week is no longer based on the needs of whatever experiments that I'm running, or the whims and wishes of the students or the people that are around me that want to help and assistance. So that structure is fantastic. Teaching the students is also just ridiculously fun. They always have really silly things to say that always put a smile on your face and make you laugh. I've really loved doing the labs because you can think of a million different ways in which they're going to muck something up, and they'll find a different one. So correcting that and making sure that they have success during their period of time in the lab is always really it's really fun. As for the low points, like most of academia, there's an awful lot of politics involved, which means that if you want to make changes or if you want to bring about and do something new, it can take a lot of time, and it takes getting a lot of people on board to get anything agreed. So that's probably the only low point.
Okay, so I hope you can see some contrast. It's really important that you get to speak to a number of academics, though, because everybody has their own take on what causes them pressure and so on. Okay, so let's quickly skim through the routes to get you from undergraduate through to academic. I'm going to make the assumption that most of you are already at PhD level. So this is for science, technology, engineering, and medicine. Having said that, medicine is slightly different, so I think maybe we need to direct you towards some more specialist resources if you are a medic or a clinician who's wanting to go into academia. Okay, but a classical route would be PhD through to postdoc researcher, fixed term, as Michael was, and then maybe a research fellowship, fixed term, going through to lecturer. Research fellowships are where you bid for funding, you get a prize awarded a prize for funding, and you get to find your own research topic. If you get a significant research fellowship, often associated with an individual institution, after which it's expected that, assuming you're successful, that you would then get a permanent job as a lecturer or even a senior lecturer level with that institution. Or you might go from PhD to postdoc to lecturer, as Michael did, or from teaching fellow, fixed term teaching fellows through to lecturer. You can see there's a number of different routes going through here. For humanities, it's a bit trickier though. So obviously get yourself up to PhD, and then you've got this kind of rather tricky area. And this has been particularly hard, I think, in the last few years. Certainly, I've heard it getting harder and harder from the perspective of our PhDs. So there are some postdoc research positions, more in the social sciences than there are, say, in the arts, but they do exist in both. There are then potentially teaching fellow positions. And again, that's not unusual, where you get a contract for maybe a fixed term, but a full-time teaching fellow before hopefully getting yourself into a lecturing job. But then there's the bit in the middle, which is a lot of people doing short-term, very short-term temporary teaching or research positions, maybe getting 1 or 2 terms teaching, a couple of modules. And I think there's been an element of trying to share out as much of this opportunity to as many people as possible, which I think in some cases means that there's not enough for, nobody's getting a whole job, they're all getting a little bit of everything, so everybody's dissatisfied. Because what you're generally doing at that point is you're trying to do your own research or continue your PhD research in the hope of publishing as a book. Then you've got a whole series of routes in up to lecture, but may also involve this going through research fellowship, fixed term position. Okay. So apply for some of these well-known research fellowships. They can be short, things like Halsworth Simon fellowships, or they might be much longer and take you further up the lecturing ladder. So what's the proportion of people PhDs who do go into academia? Okay, it varies by discipline, and that's something which is really important that you know about, because you'll get a lot of people saying, oh, there are no jobs in academia, nobody goes into it. Well, if you're in the physical sciences, the proportion of PhDs who end up in academia is much lower than the proportion in humanities, but the total numbers, the overall numbers will be very, very different. There are far more physical sciences PhDs than there are arts and humanities PhDs. Now, this is information from quite a while back, it's about 10 years ago, and we haven't had an update, unfortunately. But this shows you what happened to PhDs 3.5 years after graduating with a PhD in the UK. And so you've got a number of people over on the far right-hand side. You've got physical sciences, so the dark purple is teaching in a university. The light purple is research in the university, the postdocs basically, and some people have actually got lecturing positions. Then you've got people who are doing research outside a university. So a much smaller proportion than I expected, straight research. But then there are other people, a lot of whom are going to be doing technical roles, just not pure research outside a university. With biomedical sciences, it's not dissimilar. Biological sciences, an awful lot of people doing postdocs, as you can see. There's a lot of opportunities there, and more people doing research in industry. Okay. You've then got social sciences, where you see there are actually quite a large proportion of people still within academia 3.5 years after graduating, so almost up to 60% for social sciences. So they kind of stay around for longer. As a proportion, but the absolute numbers will be smaller than the physical sciences and other sciences. What happens beyond there, though, I mean, there's still further dropout of academia. So these are just people who are in that kind of postdoc or trying to get themselves onto the lecturing ladder by and large. You might think from that there are fewer and fewer jobs in academia, but actually that's not the case. The number of people in full-time academic positions is going up and up and up. And the purple line is humanities. The green line is science, technology, and medicine. So we're not in neither humanities nor sciences is it going down. But the problem you've got, obviously, is that the number of new PhDs is going up and up and up every year. And the number of new places which are opening up in academia don't equal the number of new places, the number of new PhDs who are being created. So that's where the bottlenecks come over the last few years. So what can you do to get yourself on track? Well, obviously get the best qualifications you can. But I love finding counterintuitive or sort of countering data. You don't always have to get the 2-1 or the first. So Michael Horton, who won the Nobel Prize for Medicine a few years back, he got a 2-2. Learn about academia and find support. It really surprises me. I see lots of PhDs and postdocs who are wanting to go into academic careers, and very rarely have they actually asked academics what they do or quizzed their supervisor or their PI about what they do. One common factor I often find from successful academics is that they've had mentors, but frequently it's not been a formal mentoring program or anything they've been through. They've just found people that they will ask for advice and opinions of all the way through their career. So start engaging with academics about the world of academia. Important to do a reality check. You don't want to kid yourself that you're going to be a great academic when actually you've probably not got the right kind of skills or passion for it. But you also really, really need to be careful about imposter syndrome. Now, I know a lot of people have heard about this, and you'll think it's something which just happens to PhDs, but it's rife throughout academia. It's this feeling that, this is a quote, I can't do this, I haven't done enough experiments, I haven't got enough data, I can't write the paper well enough yet or give the talk. Do I ever think I'm not qualified? All the time. This is the former dean of Harvard School of Engineering. Okay, a high achiever if ever you've found one. So you're going to have to find ways to deal with that imposter syndrome, because there's a fair chance it's not going to leave you, but you have to be able to handle that. I would think definitely get yourself on track by being part of the academic community. If you're going to be an academic, you want to be part of that group. So do talk to other academics about their research, think about collaborating with them. Could you go on research visits? Important to get known for your work, because academia exists on other academics' view of your work. So therefore, it's not so much who do you know, but who knows you. And if academics don't know who you are, you're not even on their radar when they're coming to apply for jobs with them. So let me talk. I'll let Michael talk a bit about getting known in this field. And this is a fairly traditional view of how you get known in your field.
So I got known in my field mainly through just publishing like an absolute beast. So yeah, I'm on a lot of papers, first author, senior author. During my PhD, I think I published 3 times first author papers in good journals. During my postdocs, I think I'm on 8 or something like that, and they're all in fairly good journals. And then I went away on conferences. I got involved in reviewing papers, running editorials for some of the smaller journals whenever it was offered to me. So yeah, that's how I got known. Getting known into the new teaching world, mainly my way of getting noticed in the teaching world is to go around pestering people that are willing to be pestered by me.
You have to be able to approach people. Okay. Now, it's interesting, Cecilia's got a different take on getting known, and she's showing you really interesting about not just the traditional publish, but all the kind of other ways that you can get known by people in your field.
I've attended a series of conferences, and then through networks, I'm invited to give talks in different places. So through the talks, it helps me to expand other areas, because between last year and this year, I've given a number of talks, either with the National Biodiversity Network, which is one of the largest biodiversity networks in the UK. And then there was one which was organized by the Bramall Methodist Church on Praying for the Planet, where they invite academics from across the UK to give talks. I had presented a talk there. And then there is also the Manchester chapter of the Nigerian Science Society of Engineers. And then there's also another one taking place in Nigeria in the next month. There are others I just can't remember now. And even with the faculty here, I have given the talk with the Manchester Environmental Research Institute. So in these small ways, you're able to show what you do, and then people will remember you, and people who wish to collaborate, maybe in small areas, you can do so. And I have done that. So through conferences, through networks, and sharing what you know. And people will send you an email, they have read a paper of yours, and they want to come and do something together. So it's another way. It's not being shy about what you do.
So I think you've got both Cecilia and Michael saying you just got to get out there and ask people. And it's really interesting, the contrast with all the opportunities that Cecilia spots to try to find ways of engaging with other people. Okay, other things you can do now to get yourself on track. Well, obviously working on your skills. You know, you're going to be doing presentations. You're going to have to develop that resilience to be able to deal with people who want to tear apart your work or ask you very difficult questions at your presentations. Yes, definitely getting HE teaching experience. Even if you decide that that's not the route that you want to go down, it's really important to at least try it out. And you've got amazing opportunities to get to access lots of different types of training, whether it's methods training. Methods at Manchester is brilliant, or all the IT, research IT training that you can access while you're still a student. Because some of that, even if you move outside academia, you're going to have to be paying yourself for some of that. Another thing you should be doing at this point is applying for funding. So getting the skill of being able to write to a brief, which will potentially allow you to apply for significant funding when you become an academic. And one of the things I would always suggest that you do, even before you reach the postdoc stage, is explore Research Professional. It's a great funding database. If you're at the University of Manchester, you can access it through your University of Manchester account. And if you type in career stages pre-doctoral, not only will it show you potential things that you could apply for getting that kind of fellowship type route after a PhD, but also potential prizes that you could apply for, or travel grants, and those kind of things could be really useful to put on your CV as an aspiring academic. And then think about whether you're ready to take the next step. You've got to start thinking strategically. It's, where's the research going? Where are the opportunities going to be opening up? What's your strategy for which grants are you going to be applying for? Which fellowships are you going to be applying for? And look at the competition. You've got to be careful about this imposter syndrome, because it can stop you going for things. But, you are the competition. Do a kind of a view of what are other people doing who are getting the jobs that you'd like to go for next, and figure out what you need to put on your CV in order to be able to compete. Okay, so those are some of the things you can do to get yourself on track. And a lot of it is about looking out for opportunities. So I'll let Cecilia have another couple of things to say about that.
People should explore the opportunities available to them. In the most unusual quarters, you may find someone who will lead you to the next point. And sometimes they are usually not in packages you think, because people are looking at the high-ended everybody, but maybe it may not be the high-ended, it may be in unusual packaging, in unusual presentation that may help maybe with your writing or with your editing or with something, and gradually could actually give you that advice. I've been blessed in many ways that are not in the ways you would have imagined. Opportunities come in different ways. Opportunities come, the job here was advertised, and I applied for it. And that was because I felt that I had the skills to do the job. Maybe ideally, if I was to listen to people, it wouldn't have been possible. In fact, I wouldn't have been qualified, but I applied for it. It didn't matter that maybe I should not be applying for it, but I gave it a shot. So I think sometimes we also have to explore, go beyond our fears.
Great advice. Go beyond your fears. Okay. Well, there's plenty of support that we can give you, and there are lots of ways that you can get in touch with us. The QR code there will take you to a link tree with all the different ways that you can get in touch with us and the support we can offer for you. We operate through web chat, through queries on Career Connect. We're all over social media. We've got drop-ins, and we've also got the postgraduate careers page on the University of Manchester website. So if you have a look at that postgrad page, there's a page which is specifically on postgrad talks, and that's where you'll see videos of all the talks that we've done. I'm going to leave a final comment to Cecilia about what would you say to a current student thinking of going into academia?
Honestly, all I will just encourage anybody is they should not be discouraged. They should just maintain their focus. It appears as if it's a rat race. It appears as if some people are advancing more than others, but your own time will not elude you. Just be patient, be focused, and keep maintaining that focus. And then keep trying the bit you can. The small you do on a daily basis adds up. It's not a competition. You are not impressing anybody. It's your own time, and your own season will come.
Okay. It's a lovely one to end it on. So I'm going to stop the share now. Come back to the center. Okay, so that gives you a background from from some of our views, some of the views that we've gleaned from our research, and also about so the real views of academics. So are there any questions that you want me to deal with, Kim? I'm not sure if there's anything which hasn't been answered or...
Hey, Elizabeth. Yeah, a couple of things in the chat would just be useful to get your views on as well. Somebody's asked, what's a good number of postdocs to do before you become a lecturer? Is there how long is a piece of string question, but any thoughts on that?
Actually, there's a piece of research which was done a few years ago by some of my colleagues in the careers world about how long to get to lecturer, and it really does vary. It's so discipline specific, and it depends on the type of postdocs that you do, kind of the quality, which labs you're in, or which research groups you're in. So it's really hard to just say, oh, you've got to do 3 postdocs and then you're in. I think at each point, it's a really good idea to figure out, are you any further on than you were at the end of the last postdoc? Are you progressing, or are you starting to kind of just tread water? And that's a really hard, sort of discussion, conversation to have with yourself. Probably a really good idea to think about, maybe talking to somebody who does some coaching within the university. I know that there's quite a lot of people who are trained up at the university to do coaching, some of which are career staff, others are other professional staff in the university. And it's a really nice way of being able to try to step back from your own position and try and figure out, do I continue down this route, or am I trying to kid myself and I really ought to either do something different to make it happen as an academic, or do something different to move out?
Great, thank you. There was another kind of discussion that a few of us were having on the chat around the definition of what a short-term contract might look like. Is that 6 months, 12 months? And one of the other students said, from the jobs that they've applied for, that could be anything from 7 months to 3 years. And I guess the idea is that there is no fixed definition. It's very variable. So I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that.
I mean, the kind of the traditional one in the sciences is like a 3-year contract. Or the ones to really look out for are the ones which are significant, 3, 4, 5 years. And particularly if you can find one of these research fellowships, which is maybe even a 5-year research fellowship, that's a significant period of time to really establish a research group, to really make some progress with your research. And then the expectation will be that you are then automatically becoming a permanent lecturer. In fact, what I found is the reason I couldn't find many people who are lecturers in our biology, medicine, and health faculty is that it sometimes takes so long to get to the point of being appointed in the permanent jobs that they're already at the senior lecturer level by the time they get their first permanent job. You need to be prepared for things like that. So, but even the 1-year contracts can be a really good way, maybe straight after your PhD. I know somebody who I spoke to. I remember doing a session with in politics a few years back, and he had done his PhD, and he'd given himself 1 year. Really strategic he was, giving himself 1 year in order to find himself a fellowship of some sort, and he had a plan where he got a job which just kept him in, kept the rent paid, just admin type work. He did a bit of freelance research work with a different university. He was doing some bits of teaching as well, and focusing specifically on that contract fellowship he was trying to get. And his view was if he didn't get it in 12 months, he was going to move outside academia. He got the fellowship. I think it was a 1 or 2 year fellowship at the University of Manchester. Last time I spoke to him, he was a senior lecturer down in London. So he made it. It's that kind of strategic focus you need.
Mm-hmm. And I think that links to another question that somebody asked about, you know, what's easier to get, a short-term role or a fixed-term 2 or 3 year post? And it kind of depends where you're up to in your journey and how much experience you've got so far as to how competitive you are at those different levels. What's easy for one person is going to be very different for another.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're, for instance, if you're in the sciences and you're coming towards the end of your PhD and you're another 6 months might just get the paper out. You know, that's not unusual that somebody might be able to find a little bit of funding just to keep you on to get the publication out. But that's slightly different to looking for an advertised, say, 1 or 2 year position. In the humanities, it's trickier because of this idea of, you know, bits and pieces of teaching or very short-term contracts, very sporadic. And obviously in those cases, if there's any chance of getting yourself into one of the fellowships, which is at least a year long, that will give you some more security. Alternatively, you know, the other thing to do is you pick up teaching in more than one institution. And so, you know, I've got a little academic careers map, Google map, which shows that there are about 30 universities within commuting distance of Manchester. In the days when I was commuting before the pandemic, I was commuting from almost as far as Chester. So anybody who said, oh, I can't go as far as Bolton. Yeah, well, I'm going more than that every single day of my professional life. So, you know, it can be done. And that gives you a lot of scope for doing teaching in other institutions.
Okay, we've got quite a philosophical question for you now. Do you think that you have to have good confidence to be a successful academic?
Well, this is one of my, I've got things to say about confidence. A lot of people talk about, you know, how do you teach people confidence? I don't think you can. I don't think confidence is something that you can say, you know, right now, be more confident. What you can be is courageous. And I think that's something because not everybody knows what it's like to feel confident, but everybody knows what it's like to have courage to do things you haven't done before. And I think what you do is you have the courage to try stuff which is scary. And through that, you will then push out the boundaries of what's scary. And so the bits which used to be scary, which you've now had the courage to try, are no longer scary. So therefore, you're confident in those areas. That's the thing to do. It's learning to live with the courage and that kind of getting over that, for those chemists around, the activation energy of getting into the next step involves actually injecting yourself with some courage to go for it.
I completely agree. Yeah, there'll be skills that you know, even thinking about learning simple things like learning how to drive a car. When you first do it, you're completely unconfident, you don't know what you're doing, and then eventually it becomes second nature. So it has to be something that you keep trying and developing. Confidence will come with time, and there'll always be areas where you feel less confident in, and that's something that you can grow, and with support, as Elizabeth mentioned, like mentoring and coaching can help you kind of pick out those areas where you do want to develop, but then you've got to push yourself outside your comfort zone to get there. So I completely agree with that. There's one of the more specific questions a bit about sort of looking internationally. I don't know how much you can say on this. I can certainly put some links on the chat to our international pages for people to follow up on. But I'll just read out the question as it's written. Can you perhaps say how the situation is in other countries? As far as I heard, the USA, Australia, Canada, but also the Netherlands or Scandinavian countries are very similar to the UK, while Germany or France are very different.
Well, that's a good thing. Yeah. Tell you what, there is some quite interesting specific information about the academic career paths in different countries. What I will do is when I can't just off the top of my head give you the link right now, but when I post this on the career service website on those postgraduate pages, what I will do is I'll remember to write down a link to some of the European. There is a kind of a European institute which has compiled a lists of different countries around the world of what it's like getting into academia. And you're right, I mean, I think France in particular is very different. I'll put the link on the website.
That's okay. I put the general link to international job hunting into the chat. So there may be some things on there that you might find useful We have access to something called Passport Career that's got information on eight different countries and prospects profiles you might find helpful as well. Although this is more general than postgrad and PhD and academic studies specifically, you might find some useful content on there. That was it for, I think, all the questions in the chat.
I will just end the recording here.